Wells with my daughter. And we're going to be seeing the Paribas tennis tournament. Hope to see Rafael Nadal later this afternoon play and some other famous tennis players. So it's a fun day. So at any rate, welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And I'll turn it over to Sonia to kind of facilitate. Normally I'm on my computer and I can see all your lovely faces, but today I can only see mine and Sonia's. So if you could take over, that would be great.
Oh my goodness, wonderful. Sure, Marianne. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Livable and Sustainable Communities Committee meeting March 17th. It's great to see all these wonderful smiling faces here. I want to just give you a little bit of context. The Livable and Sustainable Communities is one committee of our 4 committees of our Valley Economic Alliance. We have an economic development committee that focuses on issues related to land use, real estate development, business assistance, job creation and retention, tourism, and the like. And then secondly, we have an education and workforce development committee, which focuses on our talent development, our labor market, connecting job seekers to job training so they can upskill and increase their earning capability, as well as connecting with job opportunities. We help employers to connect with tax credits, fundings, and qualified employees to help them grow their businesses. And this community, which is all about improving the quality of life in the San Fernando Valley region, which includes our 5 member cities, partner cities of Burbank, Calabasas, Glendale, San Fernando, and the city of Los Angeles. So welcome everyone. Let's do introductions very quickly. We're going to go around and then Marianne or I will introduce our guest speaker today. Our topic for today is employer housing, since housing is of particular interest and importance to this committee as a quality of life issue. So very excited to have our speaker with us today. But first, let's see who's in the Zoom room, so to speak. So I'm Sonia Blake, President and CEO of the Valley Economic Alliance. I've been on board with the Alliance for 2 years next month, and it's been an amazing, wonderful ride. I'm new to the Alliance, but not new to this work. I've been in economic development and small business development for over 20 years, and I am thrilled to see all of you with us today. I'm also excited to see our board chair, Mr. Fred Gaines.
Good morning, everyone. Fred Gaines. I'm chairman of the board of the Valley Economic Alliance, managing partner of Gaines and Stacy. We do land use, zoning, and environmental law based in Woodland Hills, and former mayor of the city of Calabasas. Welcome and thank you for being here. And in addition to today's activities, I hope you'll all join us for our gala our awards gala coming up on April the 8th. At the Castaway in Burbank, and all the information is on our website. So if you haven't signed up to join us, it's really a great event, and we're looking forward to see everyone back in person on Friday, April 8th. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I see that we have Anthony from the Assembly Member's Office. Welcome, Anthony. If you'd like to introduce yourself, we're so glad you're here.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for having me. This is actually the first time our office has attended any one of your meetings, but this is something that's near and dear to the Assemblywoman's heart. So I would like to get more involved, introduce ourselves, introduce, some of the resources that our office has and offer them to the Valley Economic Alliance. The Assemblywoman currently represents Santa Clarita, Simi Valley, and also Northridge, Granada Hills, parts of Chatsworth and Porter Ranch. And then after redistricting, we will represent more of Northridge, including Cal State Northridge. So we are trying to put down roots in the community and start attending more of these meetings. And we are happy to get involved and happy to support and offer the resources of the district office.
Oh, wonderful, Anthony. So glad. We'll be happy to support and work together and partner. It's very exciting.
Awesome. Thank you.
So committee members and guests, please, I'd like to have you say your name, your organization, and we can move through our self-introductions quickly so that our speaker will know who's here. Let's go on to Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. Yes, Elizabeth DeCarteret. I'm with Southland Regional Association of Realtors, and I'm happy to say we're actually bringing on somebody new. So at our next meeting, I will be introducing you to potentially my replacement for this committee, so that I will be able to put my attentions elsewhere more, and that person can actually focus more on more of the communications within the Valley. So I'm excited about that.
Wonderful, Elizabeth, great. And one of our board members, and Dr. Barry Gribbins.
Good morning, everybody. Barry Gribbins, president of Valley College. Good to see everybody, and board member for the Valley Economic Alliance. And I'm excited about the topic. We're looking into affordable housing for students and our workforce. So it's a great topic.
Wonderful. And our board member, Audrey Simmons.
Hello, I'm Audrey Simmons. I'm Chief Executive Officer of San Fernando Community Health Center. I'm also a new board member for the Valley Economic Alliance. And as most of you are aware, workforce housing is a huge issue for our workforce too. So this is a topic that we're very interested in.
Wonderful, Audrey. And our board member, Louise Oliver. Louise, would you like to come up?
Thank you. I got off mute. Thank you very much. I'm Louise Oliver. I'm a Regional Operations Officer for Goodwill, Southern California, located in Panorama City. And I'm also a board member of Century Housing, which is a very large funder of workforce and affordable housing. Thank you.
Wonderful. Board member Claudia Don Martinez.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Claudia Don Martinez with UCLA Health. I represent actually all of our 200 clinics plus in Southern California, but in particular, I focus on Santa Clarita, North San Fernando Valley, downtown Los Angeles, and Simi Valley. And we're very engaged in the homeless healthcare initiative right now throughout the San Fernando Valley. And we're very pleased to be part of this committee for, I think, several years, right, Sonia?
Yes, yes. It's wonderful having you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And honorary board member Daniel Blake. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Daniel Blake, California State University retired professor. Just attended President Beck's investiture on Monday. And we, of course, are very interested in affordable housing for students who come here. And we have a lot of them. So there's a lot of housing needs in the Northridge area. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. All right, if your video is on, I will go ahead and call on you to introduce yourself. If your video is off, I'll take that as the signal that you're referring to I'll just mention your name and then we will not have you come off mute. Ray, please return.
Everyone, my name is Ray Paltein, and I provide commercial architectural services in the LA County, LA region. Thank you.
Wonderful, Ray. And Roz.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Roz Lowe. I work with the company LA Gauge. We're an aerospace manufacturer and a thriving employer here in Sun Valley, California.
Wonderful. Myra? Myra, if you'd like to come off mute and introduce yourself, welcome.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm a guest. I do receive emails from Valley Economic Alliance. It is my first time that I decided to get on a Zoom and get a feel about the organization. I am a board member of Venice Neighborhood Council, and we are very interested in issues concerning homelessness in Venice. And this is the reason I am on your Zoom.
Wonderful, welcome. So glad that
Thank
you're
you.
here.
Welcome.
So glad you're
Thank
here.
you.
Jaime, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jaime Del Rio, and I am Director Organizer at Abundant Housing LA.
Welcome, great to see you. Looks like we also have Joshua Rouse, Michelle Weissman on the line. If either of you might like to introduce yourselves, you can come off video, come off mute now and do so. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'd like to hand it back over to our wonderful chair of our committee, Marianne Haverhill, to share more about herself and then take it back from here.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to have all of you with us today. And I'm very excited about our guest speaker, a friend of mine, Al Grazioli. Some of you may remember that back in December, the Economic Alliance and the Community Foundation of the Valleys co-hosted a conference at Pierce College on housing and homelessness. And Al was one of our speakers then. Just to give you a little background on him, he's the Director of Facilities, Real Estate, and Asset Development for Los Angeles Unified School District, which is the second largest district in the country. In this senior leadership role, he leads, negotiates, and implements co-leases and joint use agreements for district assets, multifamily housing projects of special interest to us, medical data centers, legal settlements, and related real estate policies and programs for the district. So Al, welcome, and we're glad to have you with us. Take it away.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity to meet with you, chat with you, give you some ideas of things that are affecting us, and that, some of the initiatives that we're trying to move forward with regard to employee housing at LAUSD. I put together a little deck to see, am I able to share? Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let me go over here real quick and get this back to the beginning. And do it this way. There we go. Okay. Let's see. I get rid of this stuff in the background somehow. My apologies. Get rid of that. There, can you all see that now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. So, the district, like many other, well, I'll just do it this way here. Where is my, come on. Oh, next, there we go. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about, why is the employee housing issue such an important issue for folks like us? Give you an idea of some of the real estate assets that we own, of some of the guiding principles for how we intend to use the assets, and an overview of some of the existing workforce housing projects that we've done to date, and then talk a little bit about the employee housing initiative and what our next steps would be. So, not unlike a lot of other major corporations, we have a need or an interest in trying to support and invest in our employees. They are our most valuable asset. We want to be an employer of choice in the region, and we want to continue to attract and retain some of the most talented people in the area, because what we're doing, obviously, and at least in our minds, is so very important, and that's trying to, educate kids. But the high cost of living in LA affects us just like it does every other major employer. And so, our employees have a critical need, like a lot of other people in the basin, for housing that's more affordable. Many of our employees are experiencing really long commutes. Again, I'm not saying we're unique, but I think that it bears repeating that a lot of our employees are facing a long commute. And with gas prices at $6 going up to $7 these days, I've had people in my office tell me that they just can't afford to drive to the office anymore, regardless of how far or how close they live, because gas is just too expensive. So, the economy and the drive time and the lack of affordability is pressing all of our employees. And, if we don't do something about it, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So what we want to do is try and develop housing for our teachers and employees that will allow them to live closer to where they work. And that really has several benefits. I mean, obviously, if you live close to where you work, there's all the benefits of, the reduction in cost and the burden on your income and the pollution in the air from cars driving all over. But at the same time, a lot of our folks, both teachers and administrators and those who serve our children every day, the closer they can live to where they work, the more invested they are in that community, the more they understand the needs of the folks in those communities. And so there's a lot of reasons why getting our folks closer to where they work is a good thing. The good news is we have land. We're one of the largest landowners in LA. Now, we have very little vacant property, but most of our property is covered with a school site. So there aren't as many obvious alternatives for us initially. There will be some, but some of these are going to require us to probably start looking at what happens when we need to consolidate or close schools. And I think or the other is, are there school sites that are large enough that we have the ability to carve maybe an acre or 2 acres out of a corner and develop some sort of housing on the actual but the existing school site, in a way in which the school and the housing project can live in harmony. So we have a lot of land that's better utilized, but the one key factor for us is we're not Google or Tesla or Oracle. We can't just pick up and move ourselves to Dallas or Nashville because the cost of living is better, and because wages might be lower and gas prices might be lower. We educate kids in Los Angeles, so we need to find a solution here. And the solution for us can't be the same as what a lot of other corporations have, which is to move. I'm trying to go to the next one here. So just by way of example, and we're just talking teachers in this slide, but if teachers need, if they make around $51,000 a year as far as the starting salary goes, many of you know that the affordability index is around 30% of your gross income. Well, 30% of their gross income says that a starting teacher in LA should not pay more than $1,240 a month in rent. And as any of you know, regardless of where you are in Los Angeles, that prices starting teachers out of 98% of the market. There just aren't $1,200 a month units running around. So they're having to spend right off the bat 2 and 3 times what they should be spending in order to just afford a place to live. And that's as a starting teacher. And by the way, one other thing I wanted to point out here, I don't know if Harold, there. We need about 1,100 new teachers a year for the next few years. That's because of attrition and retirement and people moving out of state. But we have a huge demand for teachers alone. So if I have 1,100 new teachers a year coming into the district, if we could find them and if they would come, that's a lot of housing that we need to try and help to support just that component of our workforce. This is a scatter diagram of where all of our people who work at the district, where do they live? And you can see that, maybe you can't see, but I'm looking at 46 people who live in Lancaster and 3 people who live south of Murrieta. So we have people coming from a wide range of the geographic basin just to try and come to work every day. And we've got to cut those commute times. It's better for them. It's better for all of us. As I said, the good news is we own a lot of land. We have about 1,386 schools and centers. We've got 21,000 buildings totaling over 78 million square feet. And just as by frame of reference, the downtown LA office market is about 68 million feet. And the downtown San Francisco office market is 76 million feet. So we have more square footage of facilities than those major markets. We also own over 6,400 acres of land, which is about the equivalent of 10 square miles. City of Santa Monica is 8.3 square miles. And Newhall Ranch is 6,000 acres. So we own a lot of property. And it spans over 710 square miles of LA and 26 adjacent municipalities. And some portions of these properties are underutilized, but not very many. So the guiding principles for us when we're looking at using our real estate for other purposes is we want to make sure it supports the educational mission because students are at the center of everything we do. We want to also look at ways to use our land to invest in our employees who serve school communities. We want to support the communities that LAUSD serves. And we want to use space and funding more efficiently, which I think is going to be something that will continue to be, well, it's a growing issue at the district, is how do we ensure that we use our assets wisely and provide for the future of our kids. Now, I mentioned that we did a couple workforce housing projects already. There are 3 listed here: Sage Park Apartments down in Gardena that we did in partnership with Bridge Housing. Selma Community Housing in Hollywood that we did with Obode, and the Norwood Learning Village near Norwood Elementary School, which is essentially just up the street from USC in downtown LA, that we did with Thomas Safran Associates. All 3 projects were very successful. All 3 projects, when we started, probably back in 2009, the district really didn't know very much, if anything at all, about affordable housing. All they knew is that they wanted to try and do something to begin to bend the curve on this affordability issue for their employees. And at the same time, if you may remember, in those days, we were buying up a lot of land in order to build all of our new schools that were part of our bond measure. And I think the board had a little bit of a feeling that they had some moral obligation to try and replace some of the housing stock. So we enter into agreements on 3 different sites with 3 different nonprofit housing developers to build employee housing. And in all 3 instances, the only requirement that the district had, because we put all of the responsibility on the developers to entitle it, design it, finance it, build it, market it. The only requirement we had was that we wanted district employees to have a preference in the leasing of the units. So all 3 projects were built. We completed around 185 units, and we leased going in 82% of those units. We probably would have leased more, but 1 unit in each project was reserved for the manager, and about 4 to 6 units were reserved for folks that had disabilities, and no district employees with disabilities applied. Otherwise, we leased virtually every other unit. And as I said, that was about 82%. Today, all 3 of those projects are very successful. All 3 of those projects are full, but the percentage of district employees in those units is down under 60%. And it isn't because people moved out, because if they did, we have a long waiting list of people to take their place. It's because they stopped working for the district. So that's an issue that you'll see that we're trying to resolve or address in our next phase. So the lessons we learned, again, we didn't know very much about affordable housing at the time, but what we now know is it requires a low land cost, a low cost of construction, and a low cost of financing, which is oftentimes provided by grants and subsidies. And we are mission driven. So we're not trying to do this to make money. We're doing it to try and support our employees. So we're waiving any substantial, or waiving the thought that there might be some substantial financial return on a project if we're using the land for employee housing. We got a high demand. We have probably a couple thousand people on the waiting list at each site that would be interested in taking the place of one of our employees who vacates. But we also learned that the type of financing that's available or necessary to be able to support these types of projects, there's multiple layers of debt and equity, and a lot of those layers have restrictions or requirements that require what percentage of the units have to be affordable, how long a period of time do they have to be affordable. And we're not suggesting that those are issues that we're trying to subvert, but what they do is they have a tendency to restrict the flexibility that we may have in terms of what types of employees and what income brackets might these units be available for. So for instance, if one is using 4% low-income housing tax credits or LIHTC, those incomes are restricted to 30 to 60% of the average median income. So in the case of the 3 projects we built, all 3 were built with 4% LIHTC funding. That's good news. The bad news is, if there is any bad news, is that teachers make too much money. So although we were able to fill all of those units with folks below the $51,000 level, we weren't able to take care of any of the folks above that number, teachers or otherwise. So one of our goals in the future is to ensure that we have the ability to offer units to a broader range of folks in our various respective income brackets throughout the district. The other thing is that building from scratch takes a long time, particularly in the affordable housing side, because this debt and equity stack is so hard to put together, and many times you have to apply for different type of credits, and if you miss that application period, you have to wait another 6 months or whatever it may be. The other issue for us is our land is publicly zoned, and so there has to be some sort of conversion from a public use to a residential use, and that takes a long time. So it took a long time, and then the issue for us is, although we have land that we might be able to build on, and we may still do that, it just takes a long time. And as you know, we need housing now. So one of the things that we're trying to do is determine what are other ways or what are other vehicles do we have to be able to use our assets to be able to provide housings sooner than 5 to 7 years from now. Let me go, sorry. So the initiative that we put in front of the board under the last superintendent was to try and develop or provide as many as 2,000 rental units for district employees in the next 5 years. We want to have the ability to control the tenancy in those units and offer the ability to, or offer the opportunity to a broader range of our folks in our income brackets. We want to try and figure out how to fast track these projects whenever possible, because again, we need the housing now. If we're hiring 1,100 teachers a year, if it takes me 5 years to get a housing up, that's 5,000 plus teachers alone that needed housing when they came into the market that we didn't have. Obviously, we're trying to do this at no cost to the district because virtually everything, we don't have any bond funds available for these types of projects. So anything we do, we want to reduce or eliminate the impact on the general fund. Obviously, the process needs to be totally transparent. We're not here to hide anything. In fact, the community engagement component of this is, very important for us because again, we are going to have some sites that are going to be vacant and we're going to have some sites that might not. And so even on the vacant sites, as you know, in the Valley, and if all of you who've been around LA long enough to know that NIMBYism is rampant throughout LA, and any project you build, no matter what your good intentions or who you're building it for, runs the risk of being challenged and tied up in court. So some of the things we're going to be looking at first, like I said, is our underutilized properties or a site that's not currently projected or needed for school purposes. We want to have the ability to provide these units in a broader geographic area. Not everybody wants to live in Playa Vista or in the Valley or in Boyle Heights. So we need to understand what is that demographic and where do people want to live. Obviously, we want to reduce the maintenance burden and eliminate the property tax because on our closed school sites, for instance, we now have to pay property taxes on those sites. And we want things that, again, where these locations are responsive to the needs and interests of our employees. And so to that end, what we view the next steps are, in addition to a consistent community engagement process, we are ready to put out a request for proposal for a consultant or consultants who first and foremost would help provide or develop and provide a survey of district employees. Because what we need to understand is what is that depth and breadth of that market. I have no doubt that if I built 100 units of housing that was more affordable in Playa Vista, that I'd lease it up to district employees in a heartbeat. But where do those employees live? I don't want to build that in Playa Vista and have somebody drive all the way to Sun Valley to get to work every day. So how many units could I build in Sun Valley to attract folks to that neighborhood? How many units in San Pedro or near downtown or in mid-cities? If we know the depth and breadth of that market, then as we begin to look at our properties, we can develop plans for how we're going to accommodate those needs. The other thing is I may have the ability to build 100 units on a site in mid-cities, just as an example, but I may only have a demand for 40 of those units from district employees, at least that I can measure or depend upon. So that means I have 60 units that I can do something else with. Now I could decide to make them all affordable, or I could decide to do those 60 units maybe at market rate, and that market rate component would help subsidize the affordable component. But if I just said I'm going to build 100 units and it's all going to be district employees, and I didn't have the numbers to back it up, I could end up with a building that I would have to lease, either all of the rest of the units at an affordable rate, which effectively puts us right back in the situation that we have right now, which is that we're almost building public housing, and that's not what we're intending to do. That's not our priority. Or I would lose the flexibility maybe of doing the market rate. So having that employee survey is going to be very important for us to be able to determine where we're going to prioritize our efforts thereafter. And then, of course, once we have that information, then we can begin to apply it to this broad spectrum of properties that we own and control throughout the valley or throughout the basin. So I will leave it at that and see if anybody has any questions. I don't hear everybody.
Marianne, you're muted. We're
There
not
you go.
hearing you.
Thanks. One of the things I appreciate about Al is that he's really a big picture thinker, thinks forward and thinks broadly. So welcome your questions. Again, maybe Sonia can help facilitate because I can't see all of you to know who's got their hand raised or wants to make a comment. So thank you.
Certainly. I see Dr. Gribbins. You have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Al. Great presentation. LACCD is in the very early stages and looking at very similar issues. I'd love to get a copy of your presentation if I could, to pass it along to some of the folks doing the work. Great information.
Sure.
Thank you. Al, if you send that our way, we will go ahead and send it to the committee members and we'll post it on our website for people who will want to see the presentation after today. Okay, if that's okay. Thank you. And Ray, you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I understand that this may be necessary at this point where there's so much homelessness, but I was wondering if there's any thought to the fact that you're essentially making it so that the employee is now dependent on the employer for their living conditions.
Well, that's an interesting way that's an interesting angle on it. I guess the one thing would be if we didn't do something, then they would be spending 30 or 40 or 50% of their income on housing as opposed to what they might have. One of the things that we haven't done, Ray, is we haven't developed the criteria for who gets to come in and what happens if you stop working for the district. One of the things that we've thought about is that we don't want to be in the eviction business. But again, if we had the flexibility in the units that if you stop working for the district, maybe those units go to market rate. I know that might, cause some people to fall into a homeless situation, but I would like to hope not. The good news is that we will be able to we have taken some people that were experiencing homelessness that work for the district and actually put them into an affordable place to live. So we have been able to kind of pull some people up. We can't solve all the problems all at once, though.
It seems that the employers who are interested in doing this kind of work are coming at it from the place of wanting to help. And so they might and they have to work so hard to get the housing that they kind of self-select good actors, and bad actors may actually just kind of be filtered out just by the sheer amount that needs to be done to create this housing. It's an interesting question. And Roz, you had a question, please.
Hi, thanks, Al. That was an excellent presentation, and I'm so happy to be informed about what your firm is doing. My question would be, why not expand the offer to other, say, maybe large employers in the area who stimulate the economy as a whole? Aerospace manufacturing, I'm involved in that. So, perhaps you look at, each area in which you have these properties and intend on building, and perhaps you reserve a certain amount of units for the teachers and staff. And if you have additional units, perhaps you reserve those additional units for, I don't know, law enforcement who work in the area, fire department people, people who are in the fire department, or additional contributors to those cities who work in those cities, and make it a larger reach. And then lastly, might you want to reserve, say, a certain percentage of units for those who are in need or homeless, or perhaps even veterans, right? Because we have so many veterans in this situation. So I wonder if there's an opportunity to expand the reach to make it more not all encompassing, but to cover a broader territory, and then get funding from those different groups.
Well, it's Roz, great question. And I think the simple answer to your question is that in order to make housing for employees work, you know, I talk about the three legs of the stool. You know, you need low cost of land, you need low cost of construction, low cost of financing. I mean, we're not necessarily in the public housing business, right? We're in the education business. And so what we're trying to do is do something that's going to benefit our employees. Now, if I'm taking the land and writing it down to almost nothing, and then building in order to build the housing, then our view is that the primary goal of that should be to benefit district employees, because otherwise one could suggest it's a misuse of public funds, right? Now, that said, that doesn't mean that, for instance, we talked about financing. If we had a piece of property and we had a demand for 40 units and it could support 100 units, and Lockheed wanted to come to us and say, hey, we'll take the other 60 units, or we'll take 40 of those units, and here's $10 million that will preclude this development from having to go find low-income housing tax credits, for instance. So now there's more flexibility in terms of our ability to do it. Absolutely, we could look at doing things like that. We just don't want to write the land down, only need 40 units, and then lose whatever return we might have received from the market rate component that might have raised nominally, but would have raised the amount of money we receive in the general fund, which we then use to pay teachers and educate kids. So I'm not saying that we would be against it. I'm just saying that our primary goal is to do something for our own employees. But to the extent those other things are out there, financing or contribution of cash, you know, and capital or debt, you know, low income debt, low interest debt, if no interest debt, would be a way for us to begin to mix some of those causes.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
I don't see any other hands raised or questions in the chat at this time, so I will give it back to Mary Ann.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Al, and we wish you well in your process. Keep us posted on how things are going, and it'd be interesting to hear back once you have done the employee survey and what the responses are and all those kinds of things. And I think one of the things that's important, you've certainly highlighted teachers, and they're definitely a critical component of your workforce, but people sometimes also need to remember that there's cafeteria workers, there's office workers, there's a variety of job positions that you have available. And many of them, those folks are really making fairly low wages and could really benefit from housing as well. So anyway, thank you very much. It's been great to have.
I might reach out with one thing from our side. One of the things that's being discussed in Sacramento, and I know that they're trying to do this in LA, is trying to help public agencies like ours expedite the process of developing their property. And so, as I mentioned, right now, you have to convert from, you know, a publicly zoned piece of property to residential through some sort of zone change or conditional use permit or whatever it may be. I mean, where we could use some help is support with the city and county governments to allow us to avoid having to go through that. Now, maybe it doesn't mean that I can take a piece of property and just simply build a 40-story high-rise, you know, office building on it. But is there some way that we could get some more flexibility? I know right now, for instance, they're talking about, or it exists, that if we wanted to develop a piece of property, as long as we went to the most restrictive zoning next door, across the street, or kitty corner, we're okay. Well, in most of our cases, the most restrictive zoning is single family. But if there was an apartment building across the street, you know, might we be able to get it at least changed to say the least restrictive zoning, so that if there's an apartment building across the street, I can build, if it's R3 or R4, I can build R4 on my side of the street. You know, are there ways that we can begin to expedite this process? Because that's one of the challenges for us, as I said, is just how long all of this takes. Because one of the other things that we're looking at is, might we be better off simply taking a piece of property that has a market rate value? I'll use a number, say $10 million. And some developer or shopping center, you know, some Walmart or somebody would be willing to buy it for $10 million. Well, instead of writing that land down to almost nothing and doing a development that'll take 7 years, might I be better suited to take that $10 million of value and exchange it into an existing or to be built apartment complex? That way I have those units available much more quickly. So, you know, if we're looking at ways to try and help, or if you folks would be looking for ways to try and help us, I know how difficult it is, because when the state tried to do this with regard to, single family residences and allowing anybody to convert it to multifamily, but if there's any flexibility that we could get in expediting this process, that would take one of the big restrictions or one of the roadblocks or impediments to more of this, and knock that out of the way.
So I have a question then. Are there any specific bills? Typically, the Economic Alliance doesn't take positions on legislation, but we do partner with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA, and so on, if there are any specific bills. And also, I know that there have been bills that have been passed or are currently being under consideration, where the state has basically sort of eliminated certain zoning restrictions. So that, for example, there's a couple of bills right now that are looking at converting empty big box commercial retail spaces to housing and changing the zoning restrictions. So if there are any specific bills, or if there are any bills that could be written that way so that school districts would have that flexibility to go ahead and build, let us know, and at least we can contact our partners at VICA or BizFed, which is also looking at some housing initiatives, and help support that.
Sure.
Terrific. Also, I suppose we could facilitate meetings with city planning, supervisor's office, and others to help have these conversations as well. Particularly maybe with other employers who might want to get into this work, but are restricted from being able to do that because of the lack of flexibility in the regulations. But we can talk more about that. Love to explore that. And Myra, you had a question?
Thank you. I wonder who is going to manage, let's say you succeeded to build the apartment building for your employees. Who is going to manage these buildings?
Well, typically, let's put it this way. In the first 3 projects that we've developed, the district's not in the management business. And so at least so far, what we've done is we've left that responsibility up to the developer or the property manager that the developer retained to do the work. In all 3 cases, actually, let me think about this. They're being managed by the entity. So Bridge, Housing, Abode, and Thomas Safran Associates have a site manager on each one of these sites that lives there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure.
Terrific. That concludes our questions and answers, I believe, Marianne.
Yes. Okay. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. Good. Well, thanks again, Al. Great to hear from you. And we hope you'll stay connected and let us know how things are going. We sent out ahead of time before the meeting an article from the National Association of Realtors on employer-sponsored or employer-supported housing developments across the country. So it's kind of a long article, but there's some interesting examples that are provided and different ways that companies have, typically large companies, have chosen to be involved. So it's kind of all over the map in terms of how they've done that. But just wanted to see if any of you have reflections on what was read there, or models that you think were particularly effective or worth replicating, or even contacting local large employers to consider, whatever it might be. So any comments about the article that was sent out ahead?
I'll go ahead and share it on the screen too, in case that would be helpful. I thought it was interesting that Universal in Florida has an effort to build housing for its employees. And I know that, we have Darnell from Universal on our board, and it'll be very interesting to connect with him and see what kinds of interesting ideas, might be possibilities there. Also, this just brings to, I think, mind that we might approach our largest 20 employers and just even share with them this wonderful presentation and the work LAUSD is doing, and see who might be inspired to do this work and even share the work that they're doing so others might also come on board. Those were some thoughts that came to mind.
Yeah, I had noticed that in some cases, these large employers contract, just like LAUSD did, they contracted with local nonprofit housing developers to actually develop the housing. In other cases, they developed a kind of a fund that could be utilized for housing. I think in some cases, they recognize that, for example, in the high tech sector, many of their employees are very well paid and can certainly afford their own housing, but they all are utilizing gardeners and housekeepers and hairstylists and dry cleaners and all these smaller businesses and individual employers that need housing. And so, and because of the high wages, they've jacked up the prices of the average cost of housing in their areas. So they've decided to invest in affordable housing for use for, you know, others in the community aside from their employees. So it's kind of a range of possibilities here as to what's being done. So
I'll go ahead and share that link in the chat so people can take a look.
I do have one more question for Al. Al, you mentioned, you were wondering like how many, you were saying you need to do a case study and find out even how many people would even want to live in these homes, right?
Right.
So honestly, if somebody offered me the opportunity to have this free home, I would just jump on it. But I think moreover, the reason there's an issue is because the crime and the city and the streets are so overwhelmed with challenges that's why the question is posed. You don't even know if these people would live at this place if it were even free. So is it not the bigger problem that needs to be solved, cleaning up these streets and sort of focusing on that, making California, I'm native California, I was born here. It's a completely different California than what it once was. Wouldn't we better serve the community if we were more focused on fixing those issues so that if you did have this great development for teachers, like every teacher would sign up for it? Wouldn't that be something to talk about sometime?
Well, I think that's something that, this mayor or the ones coming up would be, the ones to kind of try to talk to and address that issue. We're trying to do our little part, but you're right. I mean, well, let's put it this way. If we don't find a way to find housing or provide housing that's more affordable for our employees, that's just one more reason for them to go on top of the things that you just mentioned. I mean, California is losing companies and employees in droves, and it's only going to get worse if we don't do something about it. And addressing those issues, in addition to the lack of affordable housing, there's a lot of them, and I don't think we can hit them all at once, but we can all do our part for our individual component. And trying to provide housing that's more affordable for folks just takes one less thing off the table that people can use for an excuse to leave.
Well, there was a reference made to free. There was a reference made to free housing, but you'd still be charging some rent from.
No, these units aren't free. These units are more affordable, so that they would be within, at that 30% of gross income or less range, so that it's at least they are more affordable than what you're looking at today. But they're not free.
I didn't really mean free, but I meant,
Yeah. Okay.
If I was getting a great deal on a property, it would feel, that's more what I meant, basically. And I think at this point, to be honest with you, in some of the areas, I don't think you could even offer free housing and get a bite in some areas that are so overridden with crime and just crime. It's pretty bad, and it's growing, it's spreading. So I know we're all ambitious to participate in the solutions, but I mean, it's growing. I'm in Woodland Hills. It's not a good area anymore. So, the streets need to get cleaned up.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys, I have to run to another meeting, but I really appreciate your time and your interest in listening. And I look forward to working with you as we move forward through this initiative. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you very
Just
much.
a note about that. I think from having previous conversations with Al, there are some school properties that have closed that are actually in very nice neighborhoods. They closed because there were so many private schools competing with the public school system. But you know, it's a great area to live. I mean, if I was a teacher and I could choose to live in Woodland Hills as compared to, you know, South LA, and it was close to my school district, or my school rather, you know, I think it'd be great to live in Woodland Hills. So I think we need to kind of recognize that there's schools all over the district that have closed or have reduced attendance. Our demographics are changing. There's fewer children now than there used to be. So we built out our schools when we had a much larger population of students. And there's also many more students that are in private school now than there used to be. So it has really impacted, you know, the enrollment at local public schools. So anyway, just a comment in response to that. So anyway, are there any other questions or comments rather about the article that was sent out, or just the idea of employers investing in local housing initiatives? Okay, well, unless I'm missing something, I can't see the whole screen, so I'm not sure if somebody's raising their hand and I just can't see them.
Oh, good point, Marianne. Okay, I'm looking. I see no raised hands and nothing in the chat.
All right. So we'll just give you a quick update on our Housing Creates Communities campaign. Right now, we're really trying to get banners posted or put up rather. It looks like the city of San Fernando is going to do that. And thanks to Martha Diaz-Eskenazi, who coordinated with their city manager and went through their city council. And now there's just some final things that need to be done to get those banners up. I think Martha said she would try to be contacting the city of Glendale in the next week about that. I've had a lot of conversations in the last couple of weeks with the field deputies for our Valley representatives, or Valley elected city council members rather. And I think that's a very complicated way to go. So I think Sonia and I have been working on some other strategies and possibilities as far as getting the banner initiative going. So at any rate, we're still moving forward on that, and we hope to get things moving, and we'll keep you posted. Anything else you want to say about that, Sonia, at this point?
No, man, no. We just continue to promote supporting housing development in our social media and in our emails as well. Our last email, we put out 4 social media posts that people can post on their social media. And so if you haven't already, I just encourage all of you to go to our campaign page and take the pledge that I support housing by just clicking on the link, completing a very brief survey. And I'll put that link in the chat here so that everyone can be able to participate.
Great. Any announcements? I know Fred had mentioned the upcoming Economic Alliance Gala in April. Certainly hope that all of you will buy tickets or be sponsors and enjoy a fun evening out. Any other announcements of upcoming events or activities that we should be aware of?
Let's see, I would love to share our upcoming activities at thevalley.net/events. Let me go ahead and share. So we've got, this is the place where you will be able to find out what's going on at the Alliance. Of course, today's meeting and our annual gala. Next, in April 14th, we're going to have a series of educational webinars, our Next Level Growth series to help companies grow here in the Valley. And we're going to have presenters talking about public investment that's happening in the Valley and private investment projects that companies can bid on for building that's going to be taking place here in the Valley. And then just after that webinar, we also have our Economic Development Committee meeting where our city of Burbank will be featured and talking about some of their major real estate developments there. Yeah, and then you'll see other events and committee meetings that are coming up as well.
Great. Well, I think that covers everything we planned to talk about today. So thank you all for coming, and we'll plan to see you again at our April meeting, and wish you well for your day ahead.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.